What is up, guys, and welcome to Stormtrooper Tuesday. I'm going to talk about pretty much every single Stormtrooper variant that I have, but since I have so many, I am going to do this in two parts, so today will be part one. So first up is this one I'm holding here. This is like the classic Stormtrooper. I don't know if this was the first Stormtrooper model ever, but it's definitely the first one that I had. It came from this like really old battle pack. I've always been a fan of their look. Once again, might just be because I'm nostalgic for it. Even though this one's faded, you can still see the amount of detail that it has like between like the belt and like the midway through the chest piece. How there are all these little tiny like lines and dots and everything. It's just a really nice attention to detail, especially like when you're a kid and you see these Stormtroopers. It's still simplistic, yet detailed, and still pretty accurate and overall to the movies. I especially like these helmets. Once again, it might just be because I'm nostalgic for these, or just because I grew up with this being like the normal. These Stormtroopers never came with the head. They were just like this plain black head underneath. They never gave them like a face or anything. And then when you put it on in the back, there's like all these indents and everything. Very well shaped, definitely has the shape of a Stormtrooper helmet, pretty accurate there. I like all these little markings that all these have around, especially like over the nose there. Really well done minifigure. These are so classic and iconic, at least to me. Now up next is this pretty similar minifigure. It has all the same parts, just with a few extra ones, and that's this one right here. I like this shoulder pad here, how it's this like old paper cape material, just smaller. And it does come with this little pack here. Just goes on the back right there, just has these like lightsaber pieces that come down. Just a nice little addition, just to have, and adds just that little bit of extra look to it, makes it look really cool. Now once again, pretty similarly to the last one, this one's based off of a similar look, and that's this guy right here. Now once again, as you can see, it has this paper shoulder pad, and although you can see this one has a pattern on it, as opposed to just being a plain black one. Mine's a little bit discolored just from age, but as you can see, it has the same like backpack sort of gimmick going on there. Now the biggest difference for this is all these like sand markings and everything that are on it. Now this minifigure is super cool. It really just goes to show that LEGO still adds these like details, even though like they easily could have just put these minifigures out without having these sand marks, and it would have still worked fine. But just adding all these like just these little coloring splotches here and there really just adds to the detail and really puts it in a setting for this character. But as you can see, it has updated chest printings, even has leg printing and toe printing here. The helmet's still pretty much the same besides all the sand marks and everything. It might be slightly different, but I think it's the same mold, just with like different printings on it. Now, unlike the previous two, this one in particular, as well as the next one, both came with this version of the Stormtrooper head. Now, this was a thing that they started doing to give them some sort of a depth to them, but still have that like look where if you see them from the back, you can still see like the black head under the helmet. But except this time they gave it a face, so when the helmet is off, it still has some personality to it. And that's cool. I was never a super huge fan of these, but I understand why they wanted to do this. Makes sense to me. I was just never the biggest fan of it personally. And just to show you on the back, pretty similar printing to the previous one, just like more details and like an updated look, plus with all these sand marks and everything. Now, there's not a lot to talk about with this next one here. It's exactly the same as before, same leg printing, same chest printing, same difference of head, same back printing and everything. The only difference here is this one has this orange shoulder cape here. It's exactly the same printing on it and everything, the black lines. Just literally the only difference is that it's orange and black instead of white and black. But I still wanted to call it out just because it is different from the other one. It has a different look to it. Now, this next minifigure came out in the 2021 Mandalorian sets, and that's this guy right here. Now, it has a pretty similar look to the previous one that I just talked about. However, this time the shoulder pad here is a bit smaller, doesn't come down quite as far, and noticeably it is yellow instead of orange, as well as all these other markings on him are yellow and everything. Once again, he still has this backpack thing here. However, this time it's built a little bit differently. The piece that goes around his neck is actually this like transparent piece, which I understand why they want to do it, but then it just kind of makes the pack look a little weirder, just maybe to me. I still kind of prefer having the previous look to it. The leg printing is pretty similar to the last ones, just this one doesn't have any toe printing. And some parts, as you can see, like on the left leg and right leg, are actually kind of less detailed. They don't have as much of these like thinner black lines across, whereas over here they just like kind of fade everything together. It still looks really cool on this one, but it's not quite as detailed. Now, the biggest difference with this one is this helmet piece. I'm not the biggest fan of these new helmet pieces that they have for these. I think they're too, like, flat on the front and they come down kind of awkwardly. As you can see, they don't stick out quite as much. It makes the face look a little flat. I think personally I like the older one more, but I can understand why they want to kind of change it up because it has been the same for so long. Like, these are one of the only like 2 or 3 I have that have this different helmet to it. It works. It's not a big deal really. It still works for like most of these characters. Now this one did actually come with a face printing. However, it's just a standard one. I'm pretty sure this is the face that Loki had from yesterday's episode. And just to show, this back printing is also a lot different than I thought it would be. I like how squared off everything is, and it's like little pegs on here. I don't know exactly what it's supposed to be. I know it's from the Mandalorian series because that's the set this came in, but I do think this is a pretty cool back printing. I don't have any other Stormtroopers that quite look like this. So the next one I'm going to talk about is pretty much the same as before. The only difference is it doesn't have any of these yellow lines. It came in the same set as the other ones, so as you can see, it has this updated face. Just on a side note, I find it pretty interesting that they don't give every single Stormtrooper a male face underneath. I think that's a nice addition. It's just a cool little detail that I've noticed. The back printing's pretty much the same as the classic ones, just a bit more updated and everything. Now, the next one I'm going to talk about was not from the same set. However, it will look sort of like a halfway point between the classic Stormtroopers here and this most recent one that I've talked about. And that's this one right here. So as you can see, it has a more classic helmet piece here. It just has a bit more different of printing on top. But besides that, the leg printing and I think the chest printing are pretty much the same. This is just a little bit before they started using the new helmets. Once again, personally, I still think these helmets look better. I think they hold up against time better. I think the other ones are just a little too flat-faced and goofy looking. And just one more thing, this does have also a slightly different face from some of the other ones. So I just like how they're not always using the exact same face for every Stormtrooper. It's pretty nice just to have some sort of difference between them. So up next is this Scout Trooper right here. Once again, this is a bit older of a minifigure, not quite as old as the first one that I talked about, but still a pretty old one from my collection. But as you can see, it looks like the Scout Troopers from Return of the Jedi. That's the one they're based off of. This chest print is not as detailed. It doesn't have as many intricacies as the classic Stormtroopers do. There is no back printing on the back of these, which was pretty surprising for me, which I thought was pretty surprising because they came out well after the first Stormtroopers, and pretty much every Stormtrooper I have has a back printing. I think this is the only Stormtrooper I have with no back printing. I'm pretty sure every single other Stormtrooper I have has some sort of back printing. So it's a little strange to me that this one doesn't, especially since it didn't come out like before the classic Stormtrooper or anything. At least in the set that I got him in. Now, one interesting thing is about this helmet here. As you can see, it actually has like no black part of the visor. It's relying on the black head underneath to sort of create that visor. Pretty standard. I'm not the super biggest fan of this because, like I said, it doesn't have any back printing. And the front printing that is there isn't super well detailed. I think this just could have had a little bit more to it, but it's still like an okay minifigure. Now, the next one I'm going to talk about came in the Razor Crest set from The Mandalorian, and it's the same sort of Scout Trooper, however, this time it is a bit different. Now, I love how this Scout Trooper looks. I think it's way better than the previous one, and that's not just because it's newer and more detailed, just like overall, like how they have the black arms, how they don't have any like armor on it. I always thought that was a pretty cool look to them. And this chest printing is super well detailed here. There's all these like patterns and everything, these little intricacies and everything. And I do like how it flows down into the waist print here, and then the waist print flows down into the legs. There is no toe printing or anything lowered, but I don't think it needs it. And this back printing is pretty cool here, how they have that little like bulb on the back that they normally do. Just that like level of detail would have been nice to have on the other Scout Trooper and everything. Another big difference between this one and the last one is the helmet piece. Besides having like a couple more printings on the side here and on the nose and everything, the helmet itself is actually like has the black visor this time, which I think is cool because then you could put this on any character without having to see like their face underneath, even though you can put whatever face you want. Even down to some of these like little printing details on the side of the helmet and everything are pretty cool. I like this minifigure. This is definitely the better of the two Scout Troopers. Now up next is the classic Snow Trooper that I have. Similarly to the Scout Trooper, it relies on this black head underneath to give you like the visor look to him. I always thought it was weird how these work like that when like the classic Stormtroopers didn't do that. So it just made me wonder why the Scout Trooper in this in particular always did that. There might be some reason to it, but if there is, I don't really know. Now I guess technically this is another Stormtrooper that doesn't have any back printing. This has like a thing that goes over it, so it makes sense why there's no back printing because they would just add this on it instead. But other than that, I do like the shape of these and I do like how they made the Snow Troopers. It is interesting how it has a gray waist piece and like white hands. I think it definitely looks better with the gray waist piece than the black one. And this chest print has a lot of these cool details on it, just like those little mechanical things and everything, and just like some general armor pieces. Definitely has a more slick look to the chest. No leg printing, but this is a pretty old minifigure, so it doesn't need to have it. I've always been a big fan of these snow troopers. I always thought their look was pretty cool. Now, the last one that I'm going to talk about today in part 1 is the newer version of the snow trooper, and that's this guy right here. Now, similarly to the Scout Trooper, the newer version does not rely on the black headpiece underneath. It has its own built-in, which I'm surprised they didn't do this from the get-go. Now, as you may have noticed, this does not have the back piece that comes down that the previous ones did. I do actually kind of prefer that as opposed to not having it. I just think it makes it look just a little bit better. This back printing is still pretty nice and all, but it still would be like cooler to have like the bulkiness of the other one. But besides that, I still like how the face looks pretty much like the same shape and everything. And as you saw earlier, it has this other standard like angry face to it. Now, the chest printing is pretty much the same like layout, just with the details being a little bit different. And as you can see there's sort of like waist piece here. I don't know if that's supposed to be like a cloth or whatever it's based off of, whatever those are. And I do like how it starts on the chest, continues to the waist and down to the legs. Really keeps up with that flow that I always like when minifigures have. And it has these really strange like light brown hands and everything. Not a lot of minifigures I have these. In fact, the Snow Trooper may be the only one that I have that has these. So yeah, it's a nice little upgrade to it. I still just wish the helmet had the backing piece and everything. So that is every Stormtrooper I'm going to talk about in today's episode. So I'll see you guys all tomorrow.
Farted on the track. Farted. Oh yeah. Yeah! We love that Dumpster Kid video. We all do! For more, like and subscribe. Hit it! Turn on the post notifications. Do it! Even when you're on vacation, you'll get notified.